right, good evening, and thank you for joining us. We're taking a closer look at the tax announcements that have come up in the union budget that was announced this morning by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Everybody's focused on the big relief of no tax for individuals who make 12 lakh rupees or less. This also, I think, if you consider the standard deduction, takes it up to maybe 12.75. If you make about 12.75 lakh rupees or less, then you're effectively paying zero tax. What this does also is halve the number of people who pay tax in our country altogether. We have, an expert joining us right now to help us sort of break this down. So if you have questions and you're joining us, you can ask us the questions in the chat window. And let me just bring in my guest. Looking into the chat window, we've got a few people already joining us. So welcoming any questions that you might have at this point. Ajay Rotti, the founder and CEO of Tax Compass, joins us right now. Ajay, good evening, and
Good evening.
thanks for giving us your time. I know a lot of people want your time today, so I'm happy to have it. Um, let's first just focus on that one big announcement, the 12 lakh rupee announcement, right? Could you explain it to us? Because the wording is still a little, it says standard deduction. It also says if you've got some other income coming in from something that has got capital gains tax. Can you
Right.
explain to us what this fundamentally means?
Yeah. So, the headline is really that there's no income tax up to income of 12 lakh rupees. The way this works is normally you would have your tax based on slab rates. Up to 4 lakh rupees is zero, and the new one 4 to 8 lakh rupees it's a particular percentage, and so on. The way this relief is structured is that you compute your taxes, and up to 12 lakh rupees, whatever the taxes, you get a deduction. Therefore, you still
Hmm.
need to file your return and you need to claim this deduction and then get it out. Therefore, between 4 and 12 lakh rupees, even though you may not eventually have a tax liability, you still need to file your return and claim this relief that is provided. And to get a little technical, under Section 87 capital A for those who are interested.
Hmm.
Now, what this does is this reduces the tax that is applicable on normal income at slab rates. So your normal income could be your salary, your house property, interest income that you get, and capital gains other than capital gains, which are taxed at special rates. So there are two capital gains, which are taxed at a special rate. One is long-term capital gains, which is any asset that you've held for what qualifies as long-term, which is normally taxable at 12.5%. So if your income is only long-term capital gains, you don't get this 12 lakh relief. Therefore, you end up paying long-term capital gains, but that's a lower percentage. You don't pay 20% or 30%. You pay 12.5% on the entire gain. The second set of capital gains, which doesn't get this 12 lakh benefit again, is short-term capital gains earned from listed equity, listed securities. If you've earned any short-term capital gains on listed securities, then you are anyway paying 15% tax and not the
Yes.
full rate. So therefore, that also you don't get the 12 lakhs limit. Therefore, you get the 12 lakh relief for your normal income, which you would pay under slab rates. That too by furnishing a return and claiming the relief.
So actually, if we take a look at, there's still talk about old regime, new regime, but does this
Yeah.
effectively make the old regime redundant? Is it dead? Is it over now? Is anybody going to use it anymore?
So it's effectively dead, but
It's effectively
there
dead.
could
Yeah.
there could be those outliers, one or two cases where there's some relief under either house property, HRA that they're getting from the company or something like that that they're claiming,
Mhm.
and for which they may still want to go under the old regime. But I don't think old regime is attractive for too many people anymore. But having said that, you need to realize this has been the stated objective of the government. When the FM first time announced the new and the old regime, she made no bones. She clearly said we would want more people to go towards the new regime. Therefore, it was very clear from then that any benefits, anything to make the
Yeah.
taxation better, would always come under the new regime and never under the old regime. I think we should move away from complexity having two regimes. There should be the new regime, and this is the only way that we move ahead.
Well, you are expecting an income tax act to be sort of replaced with a new version next
Right.
week. Uh, how will this change life for people like you who've, done an entire career on one act from that one book? Now, apparently, it's going to be much, it's going to be much simpler based on what the finance minister says. Are you looking forward to that, or is your office a little nervous about what's going to happen?
No, I No, you're surely not nervous. While yes, technically it's been one act, one book, but over the last 20 years that I've been doing, and 20, this is my 23rd, 24th budget that I'm following, each budget changes the act completely. There are multiple changes that happen. So therefore, there's always a need for us to be looking at what are the changes and things like that. Therefore, does things change after the new act comes in? I don't think it's going to significantly change. Uh, that was my belief even earlier, because she had said we'll simplify the law and cut it down, redundant sections and things like that. Today she gave a lot more indication on how it's going to be. What really happened with our IPC and criminal law, which was replaced with all the new laws, I don't think anything has too significantly changed. There are some simplification, language changes that have been done, but the overall structure of the criminal law remains the same. I think even in income tax, that's my expectation, that I don't think there will be significant changes in the way our taxes are computed, how it works. Can redundant sections be taken out? Yes, there are multiple sections in the Income Tax Act which are no longer
Mhm.
effective, which no longer have a role, but they still are there in the statute. So by just taking out sections which are today not applicable, that can reduce by 30-40% in size. It could become 60% of what it is today easily. I would think that's what will happen, because anything significantly altering the revenue cannot be done next week other than the budget, because if it's going to have a huge impact on your collections, huge impact on what
Yeah.
taxes revenues you're going to collect, it can't come through by way of another bill or a statute that will come out. I think it'll be more procedural simplification, language simplification that will come out next week.
Well, we had a couple of other announcements also, right? So there was also the fact that TDS, TCS for senior citizens has changed. If you are studying overseas, so that remittance, there's a
Yes.
small change. Is it largely, is this mostly paperwork? Does it change actually anything on the ground for people?
So on TCS, on overseas remittance for education, it just changed quite a bit, not just purely paperwork or administrative. Because what was happening, especially with a higher rate from the last 2 years, has been when you made remittances, the banks would actually collect 20% additional. You were to remit $100, you would have actually paid for $120 equivalent, and then the $20 would reflect in your equivalent in rupees, of course, would reflect in your TDS statement, and you would get it back when you filed your return of income. So with that TDS going away, there's actually an impact on the cash outflow that people will have when they are remitting money for education and other purposes where they have relaxed it. So that piece is not purely administrative. For senior citizens, yes, again it has a little bit of a cash flow impact, because there was TDS happening, and then senior citizens would file their return and claim the refund, so it would come a few months later. Today that going up then helps them with little more cash in the hand.
So I do want to ask you this, because going into the budget and for the last, say, 8 months or so, we're talking about how consumption has slowed down in India. We've done a couple of videos about it on our own channel. The fact that big companies like HUL and Dabur and the car companies like Maruti are saying, hey, we're not selling as much as we should. Is this a possible solution for that? Is this enough to sort of reverse that, or will it largely only be sentimental? People will feel better and so will spend more.
No, I think we would end up spending, because the normal thing, again, these are based on some data that I've seen. There's no scientific study for this particular situation, but at these income levels, people tend to save about 20% or thereabouts. So I think the balance is definitely going to come back into consumption. Now, would people upgrade their cars or go on a vacation,
Hmm.
or buy white goods, go and buy a AC, go and buy change their refrigerator, etc., is something very difficult to predict. But I would think a lot of what is being given as direct tax saving is going to boost the consumption, and some of it is going to come back by way of GST, because all of these will have a GST component in it. So today, when we are giving up on direct taxes, there's a portion
Hmm.
of it that will come back to the coffers as GST.
So, are you largely seeing this as the government carrying through their old theme of let's just simplify, let's make things easier, but not really changing the brass tacks on the ground? So, for example, we were just yesterday, I put out a video about how we have about 2.6 crore people in this country who pay income tax. According to the finance minister, 1 crore out of that has now been taken out of that. So we're talking about 1.6 crore people now left Out of 138 crore,
Yeah.
1.6 crore will be left paying income tax. Is that a good thing or a bad thing in your opinion?
Definitely not a good thing. I think we need to be expanding our tax base. Uh, you know, take markets like US, and I genuinely believe that on tax strategy, we are not comparable to other countries. We can't
Mm.
import ideas because we are essentially a country which is still making its way through out of poverty. Most of our people don't earn basic income. Therefore, we can't borrow those ideas. But just to get a sense, 60% of the households in US are liable to income tax, are covered by income tax. Today, you take the minimum amount not chargeable is 12 lakh rupees. That's roughly converted without any adjustment. The minimum amount somebody in UK doesn't pay tax on, because they are at about 12,000 odd pounds, which translates into roughly 12 lakh rupees. So, would you today have a situation where you are at the same level of not paying tax as a country like UK? Or you take this, simple thing of our per capita income. Somebody earning 5 or 6 times the average income, is the per capita income today, will not be paying tax. Five or
Mm.
six times. Whereas in UK and US, there's no situation where somebody who's earning even as much as a PCI will not be paying tax. They'll actually, people who are lower than the per capita income get into a tax net. Therefore, we need to get more people into the income tax net. There's no doubt about it. I think that's not a function of just the income level. It's also a function of the compliance, function of how many people today are complying. On that, we've definitely covered a lot of ground in the last few years. If you see the number of personal taxes that's being filed, that's being collected, there's
Mm.
been a good progress in the last 2, 3, 4 years. There's a lot of data that the department today is using, whether it's the annual information statement. Just look at your own case. Your savings bank interest income today comes in a statement. You do a transaction with shares, it is happening. So a lot of that is today being captured. I think we are widening the base. There's more to be done there. Therefore, should that 1 crore go up? It definitely has to go up.
But that's a difficult proposition for the government because, on one hand, we have been saying the middle class is having to pay too much or it's having to shoulder too much of the burden because the middle class pays income tax, the salaried urban middle class, plus it pays all of the indirect taxes that everybody else also has to pay.
Right.
If we want to broaden that base, but we still want to be able to give relief, how could, how do they do that without doing what they did today? Because this seems like the only way to do it.
Yeah, so you're right, and that is sort of a dichotomy. And then today, I think the relief that's given is more for the sentiment that was built up, and what we've been the middle class, the so-called middle class, has been crying about why there's been no tax relief, why there's been no change in the minimum amount not chargeable. We start paying taxes at much lower levels and higher taxes, etc. So, from a pure economic perspective, my personal view, I don't think taking it up all the way up to 12 lakh rupees was really a good thing. But there is economics, there's politics, and there's a populist measure. Somewhere
Mm.
there always needs to be a balance, and some of these decisions, you will know only in the long run whether they actually move into consumption and things like that. And taxes, and particularly what impacts personal taxes, individual taxation, can't be seen purely from the lens of economics and what is good for collections, etc. There also needs to be some bit of human angle to it, sentiment that needs to be put in. I think that's what we've seen at play today.
Would you um, would you credit the government here for doing what is necessary to push consumption in our economy?
I think
Will
yes.
this? Yeah, yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
today I think the personal taxes is definitely going to have an impact on consumption. Now, how much and what, we will have to see. How quickly, we will have to see. But look at it this way: 12 lakh rupees income, 60,000 rupees that you get as a relief in the next year, it is going to come into the system. I don't think that's something that's going to go out and not move into consumption. This is something that is good. Now, could they have done based on this, or the famous handouts or freebies, as we call, and money that's being given is also expected to come into consumption and boost consumption. We've seen some reports to say that while urban consumption has been it even for FMCG and others. We're not seeing that kind of a stress on the rural consumption. That could also be because of some of the measures in some state governments, the handouts that are being given, etc. So, like I said, some of these, I personally don't think there is a set uh, rule or ideal thing that can be implemented. Some of this has to be tested. What we really need is a government which corrects the course corrects to say if something is not working, are we able to move quickly and reverse or change or do something that requires to make it work better in the future.
There's an interesting question that's coming from Manu John, and I knew that this point would confuse a lot of people. It's a really basic question, so bear with us, Ajay. So, we've said repeatedly that anyone making up to 12 lakh rupees a year will not have to pay tax. But if you look at
Yes.
the new tax slabs, and I'll ask my colleague Ira to pop the tax slabs on the screen. Remember the chart that we had made to share on Instagram, so we can refer to it. It still shows tax for people 8 lakhs, 10 lakhs onwards. So there's a
Yes.
different treatment here, right? So could you explain that to us? So, for example, if I was making 15 lakh rupees, so I'm slightly above that 12 lakh rupee category, what kind of tax do I have to pay?
Yeah. So, what Manu's asked is a very valid question. Would there be a tax of 60,000 rupees on 12 lakhs? The answer is yes. But what also needs to be remembered is how does this 12 lakhs not taxable work? This is the first point we
Mm.
started with. Is they've not given an exemption to say up to 12 lakhs you do not pay tax. They have not increased the minimum amount not chargeable to 12 lakh rupees. They have actually given a relief under Section 87A to say that up to 60,000 rupees, if your tax liability is below 60,000, whatever your tax liability can be deducted. Therefore, very technically, how does this work? If your income is 12 lakhs, you put your income as 12 lakhs, your tax gets calculated as 60,000. The 87A, capital A rebate is 60,000 or lower of your tax liability. That gets reduced. Your tax payable becomes nil. Therefore, like I said, if your income is between 4 lakhs and 12 lakh rupees, you still need to file your return to claim that relief. And that's an automatic relief. There are no conditions there. Therefore, you're still within the tax compliance net. You're still a taxable person, requiring you to file a return of income, but you will not have to pay taxes. That's a difference because then you get counted as a taxable person. Your return can be scrutinized if you have not offered the right amount of taxes. Whereas somebody earning less than 4 lakh rupees doesn't even need to file a return of income.
Hmm. So you still exist in the system as a taxpayer, but they've sort of given you shoot.
Correct.
So they've not basically moved the entire system. Let me try and explain this. So you still come under those slabs, but they've said, chalo,
Yes.
if you make up to 12, you don't have to pay. It's all right. You still have
Correct.
to file, you still have to exist, you still have to be scrutinized. If you make above 12, you will pay at the slabs that exist.
Correct. Because you've already got into the slab. Therefore, see, if they had reduced, if they had moved the not taxable limit to 12, to say that from 12 lakh rupees, so good, this is brought up. Now, this is how it is. So 4 to 8 lakh rupees is a 4 lakh rupee income on which you pay 20,000 rupees tax because 5% of 4 lakhs. And then 8 lakhs to 12 lakhs is another 4 lakhs where you pay 40,000 rupees because of 10%. That's how Manu was computed that 60,000
Mhm.
rupees for 12 lakhs. So while you are at 12 lakh rupees, you file a return and claim a relief. But if you are earning 13 lakh rupees, what happens is on that 1 lakh, you pay at 20%. You don't start
Yeah.
from zero because your income is not then restarting from 12 lakh rupees. Two things it does. One, when you are at higher slabs, you automatically go into the higher rate of taxes. Number two, if you're between 4 and 12, you still furnish your return of income. This is a much better thing to do than to have increased that 4 to 12 lakhs to say 0 to 12 is nil and 12 to 16 is whatever and so on. So therefore, by not tampering with that 4, they've actually done a good thing because the number of tax filers will continue to be high. And therefore, the government still has access to all of those people. If somebody is not offering things to tax, not disclosing right amount of income, you're still scrutinized. You still have the department still have the ability to scrutinize your return of income.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I think we've made a bit of an error under the 10% category. It should be 8 to 12 and then 12 to 16 and then 16 to
Yeah,
20.
20.
Um, Yeah, so 8 to 12, 12 to 16, and then 16 to 20. So we'll get that changed. Thanks for pointing it out. We've got yeah, Rohit and Neha pointed that out. So we'll get that fixed on that chart. That chart needs to be updated. So fundamentally, do you think that, Ajay, the bigger challenge for us is obviously to pull people out of poverty, to give them jobs right now that will allow them to make more than minimum wage and to basically thereby move our economy? If you look at the entire budget, not just the personal taxation portion, are we doing enough for that?
I think yes, because that's a much larger question than purely tax, because there are multiple aspects that come in there, and providing support in terms of just social security, health, and that's one part. Second part is really, is there enough that's being done for employment generation, new employment, etc. I think one thing where I would have hoped to see a lot more is for a push on manufacturing, because nothing can create jobs like a push for manufacturing can. That would have really helped us pull a lot of people out of the poverty by increasing opportunities for employment. I don't think you can pull anybody out of poverty just with tax policies, tax rates, and tweaks on taxes and things like that.
All right, Ajay, thank you so much for speaking with me this evening and helping us break that down. It was a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you.
For our audience, remember to just keep popping in your questions. We also have Professor Arun Kumar who will join us at about 7 o'clock, and we'll discuss the economy. Remember, he's an economist, and we'll have that conversation there. Stay with us, though. Don't go anywhere.